Hello, I'm Ryan Cook, and this is Civic Tech Chat, a show that looks at the way technology, politics, and policy impacts the world around us, the tools we use, the way services are delivered, and how we talk about and set policy all shape our society. We'll gather around and have a chat about these things together and more. Either that, or maybe I'll rant about a topic for a while. Before we get started, I do want to let you all know that we've started a Discord for the podcast. There will be a link with an invite down in the episode description. Do feel free to go check that out. It's a small community right now, but hoping to grow it. It's a great way to reach out to me and let me know things that you might want us to cover, or to just hang out and talk about civic tech. Anyway, let's go ahead and start the show. Ariana, thank you so much for joining us here on Civic Tech Chat. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, I'm Ariana Soto. I am the Deputy Director at Coding It Forward, and we'll dive a bit more into what Coding It Forward is and what we do there, but I've been with the organization since 2018, and I've been with them ever since. I guess in my day-to-day capacity, I run our operations and plan program structure for the 2 internships that we run at Coding It Forward. But I've been with the team for a few years now and excited to share a bit more about what we do and what we're up to and what my day-to-day looks like.
What would you say is your personal why? The thing that drives you to get out of bed each morning and do what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're going to make me reflect a bit on this, I think. I would say, and this applies to my work with Coding It Forward, but I think a lot of the things that I involve myself with outside of Coding It Forward, I'd say my personal why is shortly to open doors for others. I think I feel very fortunate in my own life to have had a lot of really awesome people go before me who have opened doors to so many opportunities, Coding It Forward being one of them. And so I think especially in my work with Coding It Forward, my why and why I love this job is that it gives me the opportunity to open doors to other people, be that women. I'm Latina, so as much as I can open doors and for other Latinos and people like myself and just others who I recognize just haven't had as much access to this space, I've stumbled upon this space quite accidentally, which I'm sure you'll ask me about in a bit, but realizing how much people helped me get to where I am today is, I think, what I want to do for others. So really pulling people through doors and giving them opportunities to do things they have not yet had the opportunity to do.
Speaking of walking through open doors, how did your path wind up taking you over to Coding It Forward?
Yeah, how did it wind up is something to land on. I think it was very windy. And I think the more that you ask people in civic tech how they got there, it tends to be a trend, is like, I stumbled upon it or I fell into it and now I'm here. But let's see, it's kind of a lengthy story, so I'll try to keep it short. When I got to college, I wanted to study computer science, took the Intro to CS class, and was quite intimidated and did not love it and decided that that wasn't really the path I wanted to walk down. The summer after my freshman year, I'm from Los Angeles. I came back home, didn't have plans to intern or do anything. I was just going to spend time with family. And my dad, shortly after my arriving back home, happened to run into someone in his office, I think, who he started chatting with and was like, my daughter likes computers and she's interested in doing tech things. And this guy was like, cool. I'd love to have her as like an unpaid intern for the summer if she wants to join me. And I was coming home for the summer and I was like, well, yeah, I may as well get some like job experience, I guess, and see what I like and what I don't like. So I was an unpaid intern working in LA city government on the Los Angeles Open Data Portal. I was primarily working with the police department actually and working on the data sets that they have publicly accessible in Los Angeles. And it was not a glamorous work. I was basically just like populating metadata. Like there was data up there, but no one knew how to use it. And I like quickly realized it was like, yeah, like they publish this data, but like they don't have an unpaid intern to do this kind of work. So it was like not glamorous work, but it felt really cool because like every time I pushed an upload, it was going to like a portal that people could actually access online. So did that internship, and my boss happened to know the women across the street, literally at the mayor's office, his data team, and they had just started their inaugural Data LA internship program. And so my boss got me into their program. So I met a lot of other young people doing data work in the city and met the wonderful women running the LA mayor's data team. And that was my introduction to civic tech. It sounds really wild now to be like, oh, I didn't know people were using technology in government, but like, honest to God, I didn't know that was something that people were doing. So I got back to campus sophomore year and decided to study government with a minor in computer science now that I had kind of stumbled upon something I really enjoyed. And then a few months after getting back to campus, Coding It Forward sent an email over, one of the co-founders sent an email over the mailing list, some mailing list I was on at school, saying, hey, we're Coding It Forward. We're looking to hire some more people. This is what we do. And I was like, hey, this is like very similar to what I was doing at the mayor's office. Sent them an email back, met one of the co-founders in a dining hall, was very much aligned with what they were doing and very interested. And the rest is kind of history. So that's how I ended up there. It was just weird. I fell into an internship and learned that people were using technology in government, and then Coding It Forward was doing the same thing. And I've been with them ever since. So was not intentional, but again, just meeting the right people and falling into places that led me to where I am. Yeah. That's the long story, I guess.
I think that's a good segue to get us into our main topic here. Funny thing with this is actually folks that are longtime listeners of the program might already know that Coding It Forward is already a friend of the podcast. We had some folks on, I think, a couple of years ago, back in the kind of maybe earlier days.
Yeah.
But for folks that are maybe kind of catching up with us now and might not be familiar with your organization, Coding It Forward, can you tell us a bit about it and its mission?
Yes, perfect segue. Not long story short. I would say the mission of Coding It Forward is so that people don't have to have a winding path like I did. We were founded in 2017 by a group of college students who were looking to use their tech skills in government. The only thing they could find was installing Microsoft SharePoint on federal government computers as an unpaid intern. That was not what they wanted to be doing. Not interested in that at all. So we loosely started as kind of a jobs board group. People would share opportunities in the space with each other to use tech skills in the social good, social impact space. And then we were lucky enough to be introduced to someone at the U.S. Census Bureau who actually was already doing work to bring young people into the census for the summer, and thus became our now kind of well-oiled machine, the Civic Digital Fellowship. But yeah, we were started by a group of tech students, and I think that's really awesome. I think we started as young people who understood what young people were looking for and what kinds of things would excite young people and how a program could be shaped to fully support young people. And I think that has really led to, I guess, our success is just that we understand what people want and how we might be able to provide that to them. So yes, I guess in short, the goal is so that people don't have to have a winding path like I did. Like there now exists an organization where like if you want to use your tech skills in government, come to Coding It Forward, and we have those opportunities for you.
I think it's really cool that y'all exist in that space, because I think something I've noticed, whether through interviews or just kind of living in the civic tech spaces, there is definitely kind of less support on that entry step. Right. Usually there's like a lot of organizations that are like, oh, you're mid-career, hop on in. So it's like really great to see an organization that's kind of focused on that. Hey, like I'm starting my career and I want that career to be in service.
Right. Definitely filling that gap. And I'd say it's been really awesome to watch. So we were founded in 2017, and the Code for Americas of the world and those really big civic tech orgs that have become like really institutional pieces of our network existed. But you're right, there was no early career option. And it's been really awesome to just see the space explode a bit since our founding. Like it's definitely still a lot of room to grow and a lot of gaps to still be filled. But yeah, there was nothing in the ecosystem before, and now there is. And that's been really awesome to see us kind of lead that movement and that push for there to be accessibility for young people to do this work as well.
And on the topic of adding things to the space, we are here today to talk a bit about a recent program, the Civic Innovation Corps. Can you describe that program and talk a bit about why it was started?
Yes, definitely. Yes, and a new program popping up into the space this past summer. So the summer of 2021 was our first year running this Civic Innovation Corps program. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about the Civic Digital Fellowship, I will refer people to the podcast that you did with one of our founders and some awesome alum in years past. But that is a 10-week internship in federal government for tech students. And so the Civic Innovation Corps is somewhat of a replica of that model, but we're bringing young people as working in data, software engineering, design, and product management to state and local governments across the country. So as I kind of explained my journey to civic tech, and many people on other people on our team also had similar journeys to civic tech or public service through state and local government. And so I think our team always wanted to dive into that space. We just didn't really have the capacity to do so. And I think when we started to have serious conversations about launching this program was right in the heart of 2020, as all of us were living through this pandemic, and there was just no better time for us to launch this program. So it came out of partially that and realizing that there was no better time to bring technologists into state and local government public service, but then also state and local government just being really near and dear to our team's heart. So yes, the Civic Innovation Corps is a 10-week summer internship program for, and what's really cool, actually I will add, so the federal government, we are tied to federal hiring regulations. So there are some regulations that we have to follow in terms of education and things and citizenship and things like that. So with the Civic Innovation Corps, it's open to undergraduate and graduate students, as our federal program is, but we are also able to open it up to boot camp and certificate grads as well. And then for our federal program, we are unfortunately only able to hire U.S. citizens, but with the Civic Innovation Corps, we are able to bring in non-U.S. citizens as well. So as long as people have work authorization, they can also be a part of our state and local program. So we placed 55 Civic Innovation Corps fellows across 6 cities and 3 states this summer, and they were working at, I believe, 19 different offices across the country. And so we'll keep building that program out into the coming year. But yeah, it's been really awesome to be able to be able to place people at all levels of government, because I think the civic tech movement exists at all levels of government, and there's a lot of really awesome work being done at the state and local level, especially in the past 19 months in responding to COVID and all of that. So some of our fellows were able to tap into that work and be a part of the work, and happy to share a little bit more about that as we continue this conversation.
Something you mentioned there I think is interesting and unique for this program is you mentioned that you were able to open it up to boot camp grads, folks with that sort of background, which I think is kind of rare in the space. There's not really a lot of things that would help someone who is like, I want to go to a boot camp, and then I also want to serve in government with that skill that I'm getting. There's maybe stuff in the private sector, but basically due to the hiring guidelines you were talking about, there's really not a lot of change there. And it makes me think that, in a way, y'all are kind of creating something that could serve as a example that could maybe help shake those sorts of assumptions that go into those types of requirements.
Yeah, I think our work has always been led by the belief that, like, we need as many perspectives and people involved in this work. That's how we do the best work. I will add that all of our cohorts, so this last Civic Innovation Corps cohort and the past 6 fellowship cohorts that we've run have been majority female and majority people of color. And I think being able to open these opportunities up to boot camp and certificate grads has been really awesome for us as well, because we believe that there's not like a one-size-fits-all perfect person for the role. It's really like, how many different people can we bring into this space to bring their perspectives to the table? And I think you'll see time and time again studies and cases in which, like, bringing those people to the table and having them involved in a project is just going to make your project all the more better. So yeah, it's been really awesome to be able to open up that opportunity. because yeah, I mean, if you want to serve, you should have an opportunity to serve, and there shouldn't be a barrier for anyone to do that. So yeah, we're looking forward to keeping those opportunities open and making them as open and accessible and equitable as possible.
I've gathered that you were involved with the startup of this as it became a new program. Can you talk a bit about the experience of starting up a new initiative like this one in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it helped that we had already done, I think at that point, 5 iterations of our federal program. So there was at least a model and a proven successful model of bringing talent into government. Obviously a bit different at a different government level, but that helped. So we weren't starting, I think, from building blocks like we were when we launched the federal program, which was to our benefit. But it's a challenge to figure out like what components we were operating in, and the state and local level is completely different than the federal government, I think we've learned. And so it was a matter of figuring out like, how are we going to partner with these offices that we want to partner with? There's a mutual interest, but like, where do we find the funding? And like, how do we legally hire these interns and place them for 10 weeks, right? Because it's not like a full-time position. It's not like you're just hiring someone for a role. Like we're placing them there for 10 weeks. And so I think with anything that you're starting, any new initiative, like asking for help is a big thing. So like we took what we knew with the federal program, and then we had a lot of really awesome people who had experience in the space, maybe not the exact experience we were looking for, but like people we could lean on to like guide us in terms of like, how do we navigate hiring interns in state and local government? And I will add that our partners who partnered with us for this first iteration of the program were also incredible. Like we could not have done it without them, because they were interested and eager and willing to do this in a time where like state and local governments were strapped. They didn't have as much personnel as they had before the pandemic, and they also just had so much to do. And so I'm so grateful to our partners for being thought partners with us in launching this. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, if you have more specific questions about like what it takes to start something up, happy to answer them. But I would just say, in general, like, and this is with anything, like ask for help, ask people who have done this before. And I mean, our team is fairly young in terms of like age. So like, we also recognize that like there are people who have been at this work for many, many years. And so how can you lean on people who have already tried to go down this road, so you're not reinventing the wheel or trying to do something that someone has already proven is not possible or cannot work.
In the space of maybe more specific questions about this sort of thing, I imagine a starting step or an early step anyways was finding those partners they were talking about. And I know that even just like the field of like trying to get a government entity to agree to do something, that's like a whole profession. There's like people out there that do like government sales or even the nonprofit, like same idea. Could you talk a bit about how y'all went about trying to seek out those partners and build those relationships?
Right. Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point, and I think that's something we knew going in, but you also learn as you're going through, like, oh, I could definitely just, my full-time job could be just dealing with government partners and hiring practices, but that's a fully different conversation. How we went about sourcing partners. So our federal program and the Civic Digital Fellowship had been going on for a couple of years, and the civic tech space can be pretty small once you start to learn more about it. So we had definitely had state and local offices in the years before we launched this program who were interested in bringing on the types of fellows we place in the federal government. So there was like a handful of people who had already expressed interest even when we didn't have the capacity to place people at the state and local levels. So I think we started there because we're like, you've already expressed interest. You've been interested in this. Hey, we're actually finally launching into state and local government. Do you want to be involved? So that was one group of people. And then in this first year, I think we really wanted to, so obviously our programs are for young people. We want to prioritize the experience of those young people that we're bringing in. I'd love to place a fellow in every single city in every single state across the country, but I also recognize that I don't want to throw someone, like many of our fellows, this is their first time ever working in government, and you don't want to throw someone into a space that is not going to be conducive to them learning or growing in the 10 weeks that they're involved. So we started, or at least prioritized in this first year, offices who already had digital teams or who had technical team members who would be able to support our fellows. So we just did some, and it's pretty easy to, or I guess being in the civic tech space for a while, you start to learn kind of which offices are doing what and who's a thought leader in the space. So we kind of started there, as well as just what offices have we heard of in our network, and then reaching out to those offices. And I mean, some offices didn't have the capacity given what they were dealing with COVID. So it was also just finding partners who even had a capacity to bring an intern on for the summer. But yeah, starting with teams who had strong technical capacity to be able, or at least the willingness to support technical fellows for the summer. And that's kind of where we started. And I guess I can give you a bit of a peek behind the curtain, because we're now heading into the second year for this, but we're hoping to expand into some new places as we head into the new year of this program, and just place people in more states and more cities across the country, and kind of diversify the offices that we're placing people at, now that we have a good sense of what we need to provide someone with a good experience. Like, how can we place someone on a team that might have a little bit less of a technical capacity, but definitely has a need for a technical individual on their team? So we're exploring a bit of that as we head into this next iteration of the program.
Something you said at the beginning of your answer, you kind of mentioned the idea that like having that federal program in existence first being helpful. It reminded me of this thing I've heard the CEO at my day job talk about, and I know he'll probably like stumble on this and listen and say something like, "Oh, you explained the thing wrong, Ryan." But I'm gonna give it a try. He talks a bit about this idea that like after you get started, you start to build these kind of like foundational stories that can then be used to go up to the next step. So like he's used it, for example, to say like, oh, it was easier for me to get this partnership because y'all did great work on this other client that was in this like in government in the similar space. So like it gave them confidence. Can you talk a bit about like how you might have leveraged that federal program and the story it tells it in this way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you'll find this all across the civic tech space, is like storytelling is such a big part of everyone's work. And yeah, that storytelling, having that track record of the really incredible, and we owe it all to our fellows. Like, we bring them in, but like they're the ones doing the work, and they're the ones that have proved to our federal partners that they can do really odd, because people are sometimes like, oh, 10 weeks, like that's not a long time, like what can you do in 10 weeks? And our fellows have just completely blown people's minds and like what they can really accomplish in 10 weeks. So I think that was incredibly helpful. We're like, hey, we have done 5 iterations of this federal program, like here's what agencies at the federal level have to say about the work that these interns are doing. We want to replicate that at the state and local level. Like, are you interested, and are you game for kind of working with us through that? So yeah, that storytelling was a huge piece to be able to show what people had been able to accomplish at the federal level, and say like, we're trying to replicate this at the state and local level. Yeah, that's a huge, that was a huge part. And again, I just have to thank our alumni for really being awesome and incredibly talented people, for showing people that this is like necessary and also like helpful, that it's beneficial not only for our fellows, but it's also beneficial for the offices that we're working with.
You also mentioned that you sought to target organizations that already had some amount of technical capacity, at least to be able to provide infrastructure for folks that might come in. Can you talk a bit about like what does that mean, I guess, in practice? Like, what sorts of things would you kind of seek for them to have in place for that to be something that works?
I would say with the state and like local program, it's kind of working with the host office to find a good match, or just making sure that they have support from us if they need it, or kind of on a case-by-case basis, right? Like if they're willing to work with us, like we're willing to work with them because we recognize how beneficial it will be for a fellow to experience working on that team. But I would say we recruit across 4 areas of practice. So data, software engineering, design, and product management. And we have very descriptive like role descriptions of each of those 4 categories that we showed to our applicants, and also that we show to our partners. And so that helps us get a really good match. Like, we need our applicants to come in with these kinds of skill sets. And then when our partners tell us, hey, we want one design fellow, they know what kinds of skill sets the people we're bringing in are going to have. And so in terms of screening partners, I would say like I think every partner who was interested in working with us this summer was involved. And so it's really a matter of like, okay, you have a data scientist on the team, like you'll be able to support a data fellow, or you want to bring in a PM and your team doesn't have a PM, but you have a software engineer who's like familiar with what it takes to build a product or what it takes to roadmap something. And so just kind of screening for that. But I think it's really just like a team that has, even if they don't have like a data person for the data fellow they're trying to hire, like a team who has the willingness to support young talent, I think is first and foremost. Like, yes, we're screening for someone who can support a technical fellow, but also we really just want to make sure that this team is excited to bring in new talent. And I think that was true for every single office that we've ever partnered with in this first year. Is like, these were people who really like want to invest in that pipeline and want to invest in early career talent. And that was really, really awesome to see, just people having a willingness and an excited energy to really just bring in the next generation of talent and kind of pass on their skills and their knowledge in the state and local space to those people. So I think that's where we started, is like teams who were really excited about the work and bringing in young people.
Continuing on that kind of recruitment of talent thread, when we talked before the interview, kind of preparing, figuring out what we were going to even talk about for this interview, you had mentioned to me that there was a lot of interest in the program. So much so that you ended up having to have an acceptance rate of around like 2 to 3% by the time you kind of narrowed the group down to who the fellows would ultimately be. Can you talk about the process you went through to try to get such a large group down to those who were actually selected?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we had, for this Civic Innovation Corps program, well over 1,500 applicants, which was wild, and I think just proves to everyone involved that there is no shortage of young people interested in this work. And so it's actually like, it's sad for our team to have such a low acceptance rate, because we recognize that there are so many really awesome and qualified people who want to do this work, which is why we're trying to expand the offices that we work with and just expand the offerings. But to your question of how we get to 55 from the 1,500, so it starts with an online application. I believe it's like 4 short answer questions and a couple of other little questions in between. Folks apply, and then our team goes, and there's no algorithm reading through our applications. Like, real people read your application. It's about 3 readers, I think, per every application that gets submitted. And then the applications are scored and move into a pile. So a top group of candidates from that initial screening will move on to a behavioral interview with our team. That's not a technical interview. It's more just like, do you have the skill sets that are required of the fellows we're recruiting? Like, are you someone who's going to be flexible and willing to cut through the red tape of government? Kind of screening for those things, recognizing that working in government can be a challenge, and you have to be someone who's willing to work through those challenges and kind of continue to pick away at the problem. And then after that behavioral interview, another certain subset of individuals will move on to our referral process, in which we send 3 to 4 candidates per role that a host office is hiring for. And then the host office kind of makes the final decision on who they're selecting and who they want to extend an offer to. And then we extend an offer and we land on the 55 fellows that we had this first summer. But the hope is to continue to expand our offerings into the future. And I think that's something that our team is going to be working on for the next number of years, I think, into our future is like, all right, we've got well over 1,000 people year after year and that was just for the Civic Innovation Corps. We had well over 1,000 applicants for the federal program as well last summer. So year over year, young people are proving to us that like they want to be doing this work. And also like there are so many qualified people that we aren't able to place. So there's also just like an incredible number of really qualified individuals who want to work in public service and to serve, and we can't give them an opportunity. So I think Coding It Forward's long-term goal is like, we don't want to have to turn away anyone who has stepped up to the call of public service. So we're working on it. Our tiny team is hoping to tackle that problem and continue to chip away at that problem.
So I imagine starting a new program like this, especially one where you're trying to give as many people the opportunity as possible, comes into the situation where there's going to be some sort of cost constraint. You know, have to be able to keep the lights on, pay people, that sort of thing. How have y'all gone about finding funders for this initiative?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So we were really fortunate, right? We wanted to launch this program in the midst of COVID when state and local governments did not have the funds to be bringing on fellows for 10 weeks. But we realized that this was a really critical time. And I think the partners who were interested in being involved also expressed to us that like, there is no better time than now to bring in young people and have them be a part of this work, be a part of responding to COVID and also the recovery that would come in the months that followed. So we accepted and acknowledged the fact that state and local government were not going to be able to pay for these fellows. For context, the way that our federal model works is that the federal government does contribute for the cost of the fellow and our team's time and our contractors' time and whatnot. And so that model was not going to work at the state and local level. So we were really, really fortunate to be able to share the word about this idea and what we wanted to do with a number of funders, and then had a lot of really incredible funders who were excited about what we were trying to do and recognized how important it was to be doing it at the moment that we were. And so we were able to bring in a number of people and get them involved, including the Knight Foundation, Smith Futures, the Ford Foundation, a lot of really awesome individuals who, many of whom had been funders of Coding It Forward previously to this program and believed in the work that we were doing and believed that this new initiative was something worth investing in. And so, yeah, the first iteration of the Civic Innovation Corps was entirely philanthropically funded. So we cannot say thank you enough to the funders who were involved in this first year. And the hope moving forward, it will still be philanthropically funded for some amount moving forward, but the goal is to be able to work towards more of a cost-sharing model and have state and local offices kind of have a stake in the game. And we just want to make sure that, and really the priority is to make sure that this program is sustainable into the future. So we recognize that philanthropic funding will not be the way that we can make this a sustainable program moving many, many years into the future. So we're working with our partners to find a way to make this a sustainable program into the future. And again, like I can't express this enough, like our partners have been incredible thought partners and how we can really institutionalize this program in the offices that we're working in. So we're currently working with host offices to find a way to make this program more sustainable. But yeah, cannot thank philanthropy enough and the funders that funded us to allow us to prove out this model at the state and local level. I think that was like the big thing. The investment allowed us to prove that this model was also going to be successful at the state and local level, and proved that the work isn't necessary and that young people can really do amazing things at the state and local level as well.
So something I should ask in case the funders are listening to this episode
yeah.
is, you've had a cohort go through at this point through the program. And I'd be curious to know, are there any anecdotes, examples of things that happened kind of with that group that you're able to share with us?
Yeah. Ooh. So much. I think we did really robust debriefs with our partners and also with the fellows who were involved in this first year to hear about their experience. And I think all of that proved to us that it was beneficial on both sides. I think students were, it was just, I think really cool to be able to see so many of our fellows be involved in the COVID recovery efforts that were happening at the state and local level. Like, that was just really awesome work for people to be involved in, and especially since it was many of their first times working in government. Like, what a really incredible like problem and area to be working on. So I think the work was very fulfilling on the fellows side, and I'll share a little bit about kind of the things that they worked on. And then on the host office side, like, again, like, they were just so excited to be bringing young people into the fold and have a way to, I think it can be difficult, and I think this is across all levels of government, to hire. Hiring is a huge problem area, and especially for young hires, like, it's hard to bring someone in that's going to need a little bit more training or a little bit more development, right? Like, especially when state and local teams are so small. Like, if you can hire someone, it's probably not going to be the junior level person who doesn't have that many skills, because you just can't afford to. Like, you need to bring someone in who's further along, who can really just like tackle things and be in the weeds. And so I think a lot of our partners were really excited about like this 10-week way to introduce people to the work, bring them into the fold, and hopefully convince them that this is something worthwhile and investing in their future. And I will say one really exciting thing is that we had 3 Civic Innovation Corps fellows actually stay on full time after their internship program. So one of our fellows, Bryson, worked in Utah. He's from Utah, so he's staying with the Utah Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and will be working at that office, which is really awesome. We had someone stay on in Miami, and then we had another fellow, Joey, stay on in the city of Boston with their citywide analytics team as, I believe, a data scientist or data analyst. And like I'm pretty sure, I'm almost 100% positive that it was Joey's first time in government. And so it was like really awesome to see, like, he went through our program, and then like first full-time job was with the city, and like that was just like, I mean, 3 out of 55 does not sound like a lot in a number, but like if you have the context of like what it's like to hire full-time hires in government and also like junior level talent, like so exciting for our team to be able to see that play out. So I would say that was one really exciting thing. And then just the projects and the things that people were working on, I think were really awesome to see them get plugged into the work that was happening at the state and local level. We had a team of 2 working with the Los Angeles mayor's data team. They were analyzing the city's procurement opportunities for inequality in its awards. So like how the city awards procurement and how equitable that process was. And it was the first attempt to do so in over 20 years. So they were literally doing something that the city had not been able to do for 20 years. And like that number just blew my mind. Like, we brought 2 people in who were able to work in this office and do this analysis for the first time in 20 years. It was really awesome to see. There was a team of 4 in Utah building out a new performance measurement portal. Again, like not the most glamorous thing in the world, but like this was something that like Utah government needs to measure their performance metrics. And so that team was able to build out that structure from the ground up, which is really cool. But yeah, a lot of really awesome projects. I think someone else was working on kind of packaging and cleaning data and building maps, which like culminated in this vaccine outreach helper. So it was displaying all the vaccine case mortality and testing data for the city. And so all of those, like her stuff was publicly accessible on the web. I think that might have also been in Los Angeles. So like I live in Los Angeles. So to be able to like go on the website and go on the portal and realize that one of my fellows had contributed to that was just super cool. So they were doing some pretty high level stuff and stuff that was very directly affecting constituents' day-to-day lives in the cities and states that these fellows were working in.
Well, there you go. If you end up needing to like apply for a grant or something here pretty soon, you've got your pre-recorded value statement. It's like ready for you. Just copy paste it.
Well, thank you for this. Thank you for the opportunity. I've got my own little sound bites now.
So I imagine that there's folks out there listening to this thinking like, man, this sounds pretty cool. Maybe it's something that I want to get involved in. Maybe they're into software, they're into data, into product. I probably missed one of the ones you mentioned because my memory's terrible. Software, data, product,
design. I always forget.
There it is. Design. Oh, I'm going to be in trouble at work tomorrow with one of the designers now. But I imagine those folks out there are saying like, oh, I would be interested in participating in a program like this. For those folks, how should they, seek out that interest and try to get involved?
Perfect timing that we are recording this. Our applications for both the Civic Innovation Corps program, which we are speaking about today, and our Civic Digital Fellowship program, which I have been referring to, both of those applications will be opening on January 3rd of 2022. So now, not even, I guess, a month, because today is, it's a month away. So those applications will be opening, and they'll be open for approximately 3 to 4 weeks. So they'll be closing by the end of January. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to be a step ahead because you'll know when that is happening. And I will shortly just kind of give an overview of who can apply, because I think I always forget to mention that. I get so caught up in the work, but it's for young people. And so folks who have never worked in government, there's no education requirement in terms of you study computer science or you study data. We've had art history majors and English majors be involved in our program. So as long as you have the skill sets that we're looking for, please apply. And again, the federal program, undergrad and grad students, our state and local program, undergrad, grad students, and then boot camp and certificate grads as well. So we're really looking forward to that application launching. I cannot even believe that we're heading into applications for our 2022 programs. So please apply. We're really, really excited for our second cohort of Civic Innovation Corps fellows, and we'd love to see your application and see you be a fellow. Hopefully we're increasing our acceptance rate with a few more placements. We're working on it, I promise. And I would say that aside from our programs, Coding It Forward also has a newsletter and a Facebook group. And so we have a community outside of our programs, and we share a jobs and internships newsletter every 2 weeks. So lots of opportunities and internships and jobs that we share out that are not just our own programs, because we recognize that there are so many of you who want to get involved, and there's still some gaps in the opportunities that are available. So as much as we can help you find the right opportunity for you, we are totally game.
Well, there you go, folks. This episode was your inside track. You've got the knowledge for this program coming up. Speaking of which, I'll end up putting a link for this in the episode description. But for folks maybe they're out and about hearing it audio style, is there a website they can go to learn more and maybe sign up for that newsletter?
Everything, all things Coding It Forward at codingitforward.com, www.codingitforward.com, and then another great place to just see what we're up to is social media. So we're all handles at Coding It Forward, especially Twitter. If you're on Twitter, join us on Twitter. I will say that when people ask, how do I learn more about civic tech? Twitter is kind of the weird suggestion. People in civic tech love to tweet. So if you're new to the space, my number one suggestion is Twitter. Follow us and then follow the people we're following, and you'll probably have a good tap on what's happening in civic tech. But yes, codingitforward.com. There's a link to subscribe to our newsletter at the bottom of the website. And so if you want to be the first to know exactly when the application goes live, be sure to sign up for that newsletter, and you'll get the email and the links to apply. But everything will be on that website in the weeks to come.
Ariana, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come here on the program and tell us about this program that's been going on. And I just totally used the word program twice in a row, which is totally great. But seriously, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us about the Civic Innovation Corps.
Yes, thank you for having me, and thanks for having Coding It Forward twice now for a new program. Maybe we'll launch another program, and then we can share details. We don't have another program in the works. Please don't say anti-associated. We're trying to get through the next iteration of our programs. But no, thank you so much for having us. This has been really wonderful, and always happy to share the word about what we're up to.
Yeah, if you end up coming on again, I'll have to give you a free t-shirt or something. A frequent
Maybe.
Guest card.
100%.
You can follow us on Twitter using the handle @CivicTechChat, visit us on the web at civictech.chat, or subscribe to us for content updates wherever it is you download your podcasts.